Hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C podcast. It's another Playdate with O3C. My name is Jonathan Dunn and I'm joined by Chris Dow.
Block those ads.
And we are on week 4 of Playdate Season 2. We've got our 4th week, Chris. It's 4th week of Playdate games. I know. It's a full month's worth of weekly episodes that we've done now.
That's good. If you like listening to us, it's great.
It is. We've got two new games to enjoy. It's an interesting week with the game drops because we have a very, very modern game in the form of the characterful roguelike monster catching arcadey experience CatchaDiablos, and the very epitome of a retro game as Shadowgate, the nearly 40-year-old point-and-click adventure originally released on the very first Macintosh machine, has a remarkable Playdate port made entirely, in Panic's tile-based game creator, Pulp. And
Insane.
I can't wait to get into discussing both of these games, but first, we're going to rewind a few days when we were joined by Jan Martinek, also known as Mouflon Cloud, the incredible Playdate game creator who gave us, well, my toilet game of the year, 2023, Stars of the Screen, a genius, witty, trippy puzzle game inspired by 90s screensavers, and gave Chris his actual game of the year, 2024, the blistering arcade puzzly shoot 'em up, Be Kind to Yourself. Jan joined us to chat all things Playdate. Please do enjoy. Hello, Jan. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been really, really excited to talk with you.
Hi, it's great to be here.
I'm pretty sure you have the accolade of being the only person to be mentioned in the last 2 O3C Game of the Year edition of our podcast, because 2 years ago I mentioned your Playdate game Stars of the Screen as one of my highlights of the year because it captured me. I loved it. I loved the humor. I loved the inventiveness. I loved it, and I gave it my unofficial Toilet Game of the Year award. A quote I'm glad you took in the right spirit. And of course, last year Chris's actual Game of the Year was Be Kind to Yourself. Your incredible another Playdate game that was amazing. So yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. We are in the presence of an excellent game maker.
Yeah, Playdate greatness.
I'm really happy to be here, and I always like to hear when people like the game. I remember when I was playing the part of the podcast to my wife, she was much more excited about the 2024 thing. The toilet game was nice too, but Game of the Year.
You're in some good company there. You're in some good company there. I'll say that much.
Thank you so much.
Maybe I'll do a top 10 toilet game list at some point. Just wash my hands afterwards.
Ouch.
Before we start to talk about stuff, you're a gamer. What are you playing at the moment?
Right now, I'm playing 2 games. I'm playing 2AT from Kita Takahashi, and I'm actually playing it with my daughter. And she's been stuck in a T-pose for 2 hours after playing. After each session, she's running around the house with the hands like this. It's so funny. But the game is beautiful. There is always a episode start song, and she loves it. I need to translate all the dialogue, but it's great. And at the same time, I'm playing Panzer Dragoon Saga from Sega Saturn.
What a treat!
What a game!
Such a nice game. Oh my
goodness!
I never played anything from Saturn I think ever.
Wow!
And I'm so impressed by how the game looks and plays. It's very different than what when I was used to from PlayStation. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, Saturn games do feel they've definitely got an identity that. I mean, me and Chris were 2 of the 3 people that had a Saturn, I think. I found out the other day it's the 30th anniversary of the Saturn. 30 years ago that came out. That's mad. That's
Love
mad.
it.
But Panzer Dragoon Saga is just, I mean, Masterpiece doesn't even begin to cover it, because that game should not exist. It should not be, it's visionary, amazing, absolutely incredible. Oh, what a treat that you're playing that for the
I
first
just
time.
got to the disc too, so I'm impressed.
Yeah. Oh.
I also really like it because it's not that long. I don't
yeah.
have that much time, but the whole
Actually,
game
that
is
was
about 20 hours or so, as opposed
Yeah,
to like big RPGs that are 100 plus.
On how long to beat, there's just 15, so that was like one
perfect.
thing that made me play it.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, the 4 discs sort of belies its length a little bit.
Yeah.
But
They're quite short.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Tell us, tell us a bit about yourself, because I know that you've made some excellent games, and that's as much as I know about you, and I want to know more.
Well, I think most of the time I say that I do too many things, and so I'm not well focused. But during the day, I'm mostly a web developer, and I'm trying to do like nice things, like working with NGOs, with municipality. I worked at the university, but lately it's been kind of rough. So I'm just doing some web coding, and Playdate is kind of a happy place to find the better karma.
So
Yeah.
when did you first hear about the Playdate? Did you have one very early on?
Yeah, for me it was like I recently I was searching for the email where I subscribed to the newsletter, and it was like 12 hours after the news went out,
Wow.
and I wanted to be included in the developer preview, but it was limited to like 10 countries, maybe even less.
Yeah.
So I ordered it the first 10 minutes, and I was in group 2, so I got it like last summer 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What drew you to the Playdate? What about the form of the Playdate were you interested in working with?
I think that in the initial impression, it was just the communication style of the videos and everything. It was so direct and sincere, and I love tiny hardware. I think at the time I was working with Arduino and like microcontrollers, and I really liked something that is like precisely manufactured, instead of just a bunch of things working together. And I loved the CRANKY and stuff like that. So the whole package.
So when you had your Playdate in hand, was it a case of, did the hardware itself, did that influence the type of games you've gone on to make?
Yeah, of course. I think that the one thing is the hardware, where you need to think when there's no analog controller, there's just the crank, and there's so few buttons, and you need to think how to like incorporate all the things that are in the device so that it works together. And for me, like the first game, I was just searching, like exploring the surface of interaction of the device, just to find various weird things to do with the device, and just to find out where's the future in that small thing.
I mean, let's talk about Stars of the Screen, because it's such a weird little game, and I love it. Like, it was. I was trying to think. Did I get that? Would I have got that on the catalogue, or would I have bought that on itch?
It on itch. I think it was pre-catalogue.
Yeah, it was on itch like nine months earlier.
Yeah. So it's something I would have seen browsing games. I mean, obviously on itch, it's a bit more of the Wild West of games than the curated collection on the catalogue. Yeah. And but there was something about Stars of the Screen. I was just like, I saw these images. I saw like the old-fashioned 90s screensaver aesthetic. It seemed to have a real sort of personality to it. I didn't really know what it was, and that intrigued me enough to get it and download it and try it. And it is, I still don't really know how to describe it, because it's an idle game. It's a puzzle game. It's just a watch this weird stuff happen game. How did Stars of the Screen come about? Like, how did you come up with the idea for that, and then How did you implement that?
Yeah, I think it can be tracked back to the Arduino that my wife gifted me back in 2016, I think. Thanks to that, I discovered the world of creative coding, like people just making code to fun things like birds flying or swarming something. Just for fun. It's like kind of like demo scene, but just for fun on the web. I think it was like 2017. I wanted to gift my dad a selection of screensavers that I would make in the same fashion as it was on Windows 3.1.
I love that.
Just something like nostalgic, and I never finished it. Sorry, Dad. It was it was just something I did for a month, and I recreated most of the screensavers, but it felt weird, so I just kept it on a hard drive. And when I was trying to learn the SDK for Playdate, I just realized I can just make these screensavers again. So I started with that, and I just started recreating these. And when the device came, it was all completely bungled. Nothing worked. Everything was like 2 FPS. And everything was broken because I was rotating images and everything was broken. So I learned how to optimize these things. And I discovered that in each of these small screensavers, I can add various quirks. I really like making secrets in software, and making like a thing that where you go and then you turn, and suddenly there's a whole another game. So basically, that's what Stars of the Screen is. In every screensaver, there is something you can do or you cannot, and I slowly added more of these screens, and I think it is like 15 levels now.
Yeah.
And most of them are secret after, and you need to unlock them by doing stupid things.
Yeah. I love it. It's in the spirit of Playdate as well, which is creativity.
Yes.
You know, it's going. He's setting out a creative challenge to go. Here's a device. You can make something for it. You can't do pretty much a lot of the stuff that you probably think you can do or have done if you've made games before, and then but also you can do these things that you can't do on other devices. So what can you make? And it's very much in the spirit of that. I think I love finding like those sort of things, those little secrets. It's what keeps me sort of coming back to playing a game. I mean, we've been talking about this for months, well, not months, weeks. Blueprints, and coming back to that game over and over, and just being like, I think I finished the game, and then you realise that you haven't. You've just been playing a puzzle within a puzzle within this. And there was like I remember like playing Stars of the Screen and then realising that on like the stage select, that could then turn into a thing, and I was just like, that is so fun. It's just fun, like more than anything else. It's just great, and it's got it made me laugh, and that's it's brilliant.
I think one of the things that are not hardware but are included with the Playdate is the community, and I think that making a game for the community and knowing that they are so welcoming and tolerant, and basically I can hide a puzzle where you need to plug in the cable just to solve a puzzle. That's like so fun.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think that at this point it's not a spoiler anymore, but one of the puzzles
Here we go.
There's a puzzle where a plane is flying through, and it says various things like, where's the power? There's no power. And when you press all the buttons, there's a storm, and there's like thunderstorms, lightning is striking, and everything. And like I needed to write a walkthrough for the game because I felt a bit silly about it. But I think that's exactly how this kind of a game is impossible on any modern platform, but on Playdate, it's right at home. Yeah.
I think what's from making Stars of the Screen, Be Kind to Yourself is very, very different. But I think what you mentioned about kind of optimizing and things and learning the platform, Be Kind to Yourself, I think, is still probably the smoothest action game I've played on Playdate. In terms of like everything just being super crisp, it just runs very, very, very well. What else did you take from kind of making Stars of the Screen? What did you learn that you then brought to Be Kind to Yourself? Because it's a very different game. But,
I think,
did you take anything else across, like in your development sort of style?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is that after learning the stuff when making Stars of the Screen, I was like, now I know the SDK, now I know how to make the games. Now I can make the great game. So I started one game, second game, and third game, and then I discovered that I just need to make a very small game, and that is that was Be Kind to Yourself, because at first I made Llama Goes Up, and then I discovered this is a platformer and there's so many things moving. I need to make something smaller, so I started with Good Bounce, and I discovered there's so many things flying so fast. I need to make something smaller, and so I think that one of the most important things in my learning process was just limiting the scope, and that's like the ultimate game dev like cliche. And so just by limiting the scope and knowing what's possible, what's easy, what's hard on the hardware, that were like the two most important things. But also like learning how to use the hardware and stuff like that. But I think that the scope, because Be Kind to Yourself was basically an experiment in me keeping a scope down. So I just challenged myself to make a game in like 2 weeks and then just to polish it. Instead of adding things, I would just polish it, and that's what I learned basically.
I guess for the Playdate as a platform, you could say Stars of the Screen is very maximalist. It's putting lots of things in, and Be Kind to Yourself is more minimalist. It's kind of like bringing it right back and finding what is the core idea, and then how can you tweak the core as opposed to adding more and more things on top. I've been really interested to know what were your influences or inspirations for Be Kind to Yourself. Because I guessed that it was kind of like Jeff Minter games and things like that. And I think we talked on Blue Sky and you said, no, that wasn't what I was thinking of. So I was always been interested to know what you kind
I'm
of
pretty
were
sure you think
about.
Everything's inspired by Jeff Minter, though, Chris. Like, you seem to mention it most episodes of the podcast. You'll mention him.
I'm a big fan.
Like for me, when the Jeff Minter collection came out last year, I think, I instantly bought it, and I still need to play it. But I'm excited that there's like 30 years of games by one person that are completely unhinged and beautiful. And for me, the reduced scope was mainly pointing me towards focusing a very simple mechanic, and that was the laser and Be Kind to Yourself. It was when I was working on Good Bounce, I have so many particles flying around and so many like interactive elements, and I wanted just to have these like hit scan lasers that just shoot in front of the ship and just shoot to the first thing, and that's everything that's basically interactive in the game. You can just move the ship and shoot the first thing, and it happens instantly. There's no moving thing between the ship and the stones that are flying against you. And another thing was a very old iPhone game. It's I needed to Google it during the work on Be Kind to Yourself, and it's called Pix and Laugh Rush. And in that game, there are the changing environments. As you gain combo, you have a very different presentation of the game. It's not as different as in Be Kind to Yourself, but it's changing colors, changing soundtrack, and it's like becoming much more intense as you maximize your combo.
Yeah, they make good games. Was that by they called Arkedo? I think is the developer.
I'm not sure. It was like 2010, so back then I was very, very.
Because I think they had a few games, including that one that came out on like a PlayStation 3 collection. I think there's 3 that came together.
I found a Vita version. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and they did a game called Pix the Cat as well, which is similar in that every stage you do have those sort of transitions. And now I can kind of see some of your process in Be Kind to Yourself. That kind of, every time you hit a certain multiplier. Yeah, there's a big progression in terms of it feels like you're really getting faster. You're moving forwards more and more. So yeah, a really really interesting kind of connection point that I just never thought of.
One of the things that must be so fun as a developer is seeing what other developers are doing on Playdate, because there's some games that are coming out now. I mean, even just looking at like the Season 2 games, where you think like they're so much more sophisticated and refined than stuff that was coming out in Season 1, because obviously the console was in its infancy. There must be so many games that you've seen on Playdate and just gone, how on earth have you done that? Like that the Playdate should not be able to do that. How have you done that? Like what games have impressed you the most that you've played?
For me, like the first thing I always go through when I want to like show someone what's possible on Playdate is just show them Pulp, Pulp, and they just say something like, "Oh, that's very crude," and then you show them the games, and these games, I never worked with Pulp outside of making fonts or trying to play with the music composing tool, but just going through the Discord and seeing what people make in Pulp is amazing. I am always amazed by what's happening there. So stuff like Island or Off-Planet Dreams.
Loved Island.
Like Hannah or Resonance Tale. I think that the people that are making these are pretty mad, but the results are amazing.
Yeah. I mean, even we haven't had a chance to really get into it yet, but this week we have Shadowgate PD was made entirely in Pulp, and they've somehow made a visual point-and-click adventure game, which is mad.
I played it for like 10 minutes, and there's a save label on the display, and it's using a cursor in a Pulp game, and I wasn't able to like realize that I can use the cursor to click on anything, because how do they do that?
Yeah.
it's so amazing. Yeah, and outside of Pulp, I think that like the last thing that amazed me was Blippo, but because they just introduced the networking and then released Blippo, I saw the 35 megabyte size of the app, and I was like, they couldn't cram all these things inside, because it was running for 20 minutes and still it wasn't all. So that was pretty amazing. And then I think that like one game that completely changed me, like not only in what's possible with Playdate, but what's possible with players of this game was Angel Pop, because it basically taught me to play these
it's basically
bullet hell games.
Yeah, twin stick shooter, bullet hell, wasn't it? Angel Pop.
I never played these because I just started them for fun. I see all the barrage flying at me. I play it for like 20 minutes and then just turn them off. Yeah. But I finished Angel Pop completely on 1cc, and then went and finished Gun Trails. And it was like 2 months last summer. I was only playing these 2 games, and in the end, I was on the leaderboards of both games. I think that I fell off the Angel Pop one, but it's still like I would never guess that that Playdate would make me play stuff like that.
What? So, are there some? What games for Playdate have you found that you think maybe people might not have discovered? Is there anything that's either dropped on the catalogue or is only available on itch? Anything that you've sort of come across, from inside that developer community that you think people should check out?
I think there's too many things to recommend something. I found 2. very small experiences that people should check out. And one is Playing with Our Lives, and it's like basically a game about global warming, and you are playing as an excavator that is mining coal, and you basically destroy Earth during the 5 minutes where the game is playing. So you just dig out. You need to make protesters disappear. Then you make people work more. And it's basically like the fantasy of a person who wants to dig up a lot of coal. The game comes with a poster or manual where there's the ecological message more explained, and like all the protesting against the mining in Germany and stuff like that. And another game that's a bit lighter is Microwave Story.
Story.
That one is basically about rotating food in microwave
while
a nice dialogue happens. And it was like 2 years ago I found a collection of rotating food GIFs. And I downloaded from the archive.net like 6 gigabytes of these GIFs. And I was like, there's going to be a game. And somebody else made it. And
that's mad.
That's
mad.
Like the best way of making games is to let somebody else to make it.
Yeah.
And it's just it's perfectly calm, just standing in front of the microwave and just rotating the ice cream. Or I think that there are a little bit disturbing things that you put into that microwave, but in 5 minutes you are done, and it's nice.
That's really fun. It sounds like something my daughter would like. Although I will make sure she's not going to rotate any heads or anything to explode. But she loves like when we make popcorn. She loves just sitting and watching that in the microwave. And she's really been enjoying playing on my Playdate recently, which is just so lovely.
So at this stage, after you've released the 2 games you have on the Playdate, what is next for you and the Playdate? Do you have any other kind of ideas for games or anything in development at the moment?
Yeah, like ideas, they are very cheap. So I have many of them. And currently I'm working on a game with Team Comet. And surprisingly, the name of the game is Comet. Yeah. And it was like last year I replied to a message. We are looking for a person. We need these 2 things implemented. Send us a message. How many hours do you think it would take? We can pay you something. And I was like, okay, this could take like 20 hours, maybe 25. So 2 months later, as usual, these 2 things were mostly done. And I continued working with them, and I joined the team, I think in December or January. And those are the kindest people, and it's so great to work with other people. And actually, I'm working mostly alone also in the web development, so working with several people is very, very great. And another game is that I am back to Good Bounce. I completely rebooted the project like 2 months or 1 month ago, and it turns out it's much better to know what they are building when you are building it. Yeah. So it's I think I am at the same point as I was after like 4, maybe 5 months previously. So that's great. And this time I don't want to say when it's gonna be released, but I hope so. I hope that it will be like released, full stop.
When it's ready. That's the best time for it. That's the best time for it.
Yeah.
Jan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with us. This has been a real treat.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thanks again to Jan for joining us for that chat. It was a real treat to have him spare his time for us.
Lovely chap.
Yeah. Lovely. I cannot wait for Gotta Bounce and Comet. Yeah. Bring them, give them to me when they're ready, though,
and not a moment before.
Not a moment before. You know what? Having these like weekly game drops has meant that the like the Playdate has once again kind of become more integrated into my life and into my habits, because I'm sort of, I'm in the habit of picking it up and having a play on something while I'm pottering about, especially down, Nora's enjoying it as well. And so I found myself just like pottering on some older favourites like Medial, Sketch Share Solve, whether that's the Picross one, Share Solve, Slitherlink PD, a couple of other puzzle games, a couple of little action games. I've been browsing Itch and finding some things that look interesting. Yeah, I love it. I love the Playdate. I'm so glad it's back in my sort of regular day-to-day life. What
Your
a treat.
daily driver.
Yeah. Chris, you know what? You're old. Tell us about an old game. You're younger than me.
Oh, just.
But this game is is older than both of us, so that makes me feel a bit better. Tell us about Shadowgate.
Well, firstly, I think week 4 of Playdate Season 2 could end up being, depending on what we get next, maybe the most divisive week for players, because we've got 2 very particular experiences this week, and I think both are actually really quite good. But I think these might be the least immediately accessible games we've had thus far this season. And I think it's worth kind of thinking about that in terms of like picking it up for the first time, how seamless some of them have been versus how much additional effort is kind of needed to really dial into what you enjoy in both these experiences. It takes a bit more time. So kicking off with Shadowgate PD. The pitch for this one is, as you've alluded to, this is a ground-up remake of 1987's seminal point-and-click adventure game Shadowgate. And Shadowgate's original release was on the black and white...
No, I am older than Shadowgate. Bollocks.
Unlucky. Old crusty Jonathan. But Shadowgate's original release was on the black and white Macintosh, and I would imagine that it starting life on that 1-bit display was definitely the genesis for this now finally finding an official port to the Playdate close to 40 years later. Without wanting to take away from the design or playability of the game itself, we need to be honest that Shadowgate PD exists as a flex first and as a game second. and I want to explain what I mean. Like, this is, as I mentioned, a genuinely legendary first-person point-and-click adventure. And the developer Pixel Ghost has managed to somehow secure an official release on a very niche system like the Playdate. That in itself is a flex. But the most impressive thing, as you've said up top as well, is that this port has been made entirely using Panic's online SDK Pulp, no traditional coding, and that is the most almighty of flexes. Yeah. Because when I played Island a few months back, I said a lot about how most Pulp games still look like Pulp games. And although I loved the experience of that, I really, really enjoyed that one. There are still little tells in the game's movement and the sort of tile-based art that give away its humble roots. Whereas Shadowgate does not look like a Pulp game. And you might recognise maybe the font because it's kind of universal between these kind of releases. You might feel that the audio has a certain familiarity to it because it's got a common synthesised kind of voice bank essentially to use. Like the kind of the sound font is similar to other Pulp games. But the experience, this is a large first-person view window that you then manipulate with a cursor and menu interface. That doesn't feel like Pulp. Can't think of any other Pulp games that do that. And it feels a bit mean to focus so heavily on the development platform before talking about the game. But I really do feel like the point of this port, in large part, is to say, look what I've been able to do with this license, with this device, and with this development framework. And that's kind of the upfront statement. The game, though, it is a brutally difficult, frequently unfair, trial and error point-and-click adventure. It's part of the Mac Venture series, which included Shadowgate, Deja Vu 1 and 2, and The Uninvited. And these were all kind of point-and-click games on the Macintosh and, ensuing platforms as well that took, I guess, design sensibilities from things like the arcade game Dragon's Lair, because it was about, learning what to do, essentially. But it slowed them down to go at a player-led pace because they weren't arcade games trying to drain wallets. That, it's something that you played at home and you shared tips with your friends and that sort of thing. And it was that kind of framework, but then combined with more atmospheric storytelling of kind of early text adventures and early RPGs, like things like Zork and stuff like that from computers. But the basic gameplay loop of Shadowgate is you find yourself in a room, save your game, can't stress that enough. You poke around the room, poke around the visible space using the cursor on screen and selectable verbs such as open or hit or take or move. The game then laughs at you when you make a poor choice and you die. You reload your game. and then you give it another go and see if you can figure things out a bit better. And although it is a little clunky because it's coming from a very kind of unfriendly software development kit essentially for this type of experience, it works about as well as the NES version, which I've emulated previously, or the Game Boy Color version that I played years and years and years ago. You know, there's a few visible challenges that make certain puzzles a little harder than they may once have been due to Pulp's tile-based design. Because although the Playdate has a very high pixel density screen for its size, Pulp essentially has developers working at about a 4x zoom because of how it handles its tile grid. And that means that in a few early rooms, some solutions can be quite hard to find if you're not kind of keyed into what the art is doing and how to find kind of the tells in the art sort of thing. So, for example, on the very first screen, you need to open the skull above the door to reveal a key, though the resolution of these tiles means that the skull is actually reasonably hard to identify unless you're sort of pragmatically investigating each pixel. And then in a later room, kind of, 10, 15 minutes later, there's a hidden panel on a wall, which can be very hard to spot as it's not particularly differentiated from those that surround it. Again, just because the size of these kind of chunky pixels. But, these are limitations that mean that if you're after the best way to play Shadowgate for the first time, the Playdate is absolutely not the way to do so. If you want to experience this and say, boy howdy, I would like to play the classic adventure game Shadowgate, there are better platforms to do it on. But you have to give it props, because in the same way I've played more of the original Half-Life via its truncated, cancelled at the last minute ports to Dreamcast than I ever did on the PC or via Black Mesa. And the same way I beat all of the Outer Worlds on the Switch, the de facto weakest platform able to just about render that game. I just really love the ambition here. So I might try and persevere. What Shadowgate PD really needs, though, I think, to work better for everyone is basically a screen up front, just a preamble that sets the scene a bit more. And it could literally just say, this is how you interface with this world. This is a hint for the first screen to get you underway. This is why the game's historically important. And this is why it's okay to look online for hints. It could just sell all that up front, and I think more people would give it more of a go. Yeah. Because just being told this is an old game, it's going to reflect, the design of that time, because it's basically presented one-to-one here. Just go at it with that in mind and you'll be okay. And I think that would be enough. It's the context plaque at an art gallery. It's the disclaimer text that's on like old Disney films that says, we left in all the racist bits because that's how it was in the 1930s. It's stuff like that that just gives something context for why it is the way it is. And I think if people are coming in completely fresh and not understanding where this comes from, they might go, what on earth am I doing? And why is this so hard? Whereas if you understand that's how it's always been, it's more a case of saying, wow, it's actually very impressive this exists, let alone that I can play it, and it is a beatable game, and everything else that comes with that. Because it is, it's a modern port of a culturally significant work created under the most insane technical limitations just for a laugh. So I think it is absolutely a game worth playing and experiencing, even if the majority of people probably will not finish it.
I think the majority of people won't get past the first screen. Or the second screen. I needed a walkthrough to get that far. Utterly ridiculous. I mean, I think, I agree with everything you've said, and I think that this will be an outlier for this season. It doesn't feel like this is the place for this game. It feels like Itch is the place for this game, or catalogue, because it is an official thing. If this was an unofficial thing, unlicensed, it would be, free, download it, look what we managed to do, this is ridiculous. And then, okay, well, what else can these guys now make? That's the interesting thing, if they can, achieve this. But it doesn't feel, I think what you proposed there with having like a disclaimer at the top, you're absolutely right. That would be great. That'd be fantastic. I mean, I don't really like playing old games that haven't had like a significant amount of modernization. I'm quite bad for it. Even like nostalgia can't paper over cracks. Like on my Switch 2, I started playing a bit of Wind Waker on the GameCube Classics catalogue, and I was like, ooh, need to adjust the speed of this camera. I can't. Well, one of the greatest games of all times can go fuck itself. I know what you mean. It's just the amount of games I play via emulation and find out, oh, you can't invert the camera here.
like you can do in all modern games or most modern games. Or it used to be that the horizontal camera rotated opposite to what every game now does. That, you know, we assume now left is left and right is right in terms of panning the camera. And every once in a while, a game would just throw you for a loop and do the opposite, back when people were still establishing how to do it. Yeah. And you can fix stuff like that if you're using an emulation solution, like, you know, if you're running up the Steam Deck via that kind of thing, you can just remap things on the fly. But again, under kind of official ports or kind of official emulation services like the NSO on Switch, you can't.
No, exactly.
Or at least not, you know, not in the way you can and the ease that you can do so in other ways. So
I mean, like the only reason why I played through, like all the old Pokemon games. I
10
did that
times speed.
10 times speed. You know, but I mean, when it comes to a game like Shadowgate, I am split, because obviously on the one hand, I am speechless that they have been able to make this game on Pulp. And I've been dabbling with Pulp myself this week, just to sort of try and get my head a little bit around it, and sort of think about how they might do that. And it's baffling. And there's a lot of elements of the game that I reckon I could legitimately enjoy playing, even though obviously many of the mechanics and design decisions are pretty archaic. But, you know, then there are some absolute hard no's in the game for me, like just the no compromising deaths, which I could handle if the loading times were faster, and the speed of navigating your way around was faster, or if you had a map, because it's very difficult to remember your way of how you've got to certain places when the rooms are all quite similar looking, and you don't really want to sort of poke around and look at something too closely to be like, oh, am I in this room? Because it might kill you.
So basically you're saying it's not Blueprints.
It's not Blueprints. It's not Blueprints. I mean, like, I don't really sort of mind that trial and error side of point and click games. You know, just trying to like combine everything with everything else to see what happens. But when that experimentation happens at such a slow pace, and results in just so many untelegraphed game overs, it sort of kills the momentum a little bit. It's why, like, I've returned and tried Dragon's Lair several times, because I remember seeing that in like written about in gaming magazines as a kid and being like, well, this looks amazing. Oh my goodness. Oh, and it's never fun.
No, it's not.
It's never fun.
Not even on the Game Boy Color port.
I mean, but Shadowgate PD is one of the most impressive games on Playdate. It's certainly the most technically impressive game made in Pulp by quite some way.
Yeah.
But the game itself is probably not for me.
How did you fare with CatchaDiablos?
CatchaDiablos, I think, is the polar opposite of Shadowgate, because it is such a modern game. It's combining a lot of elements of things that are so popular in modern games. There's, you know, the monster catching element, which feels like a modern idea, even though obviously Pokemon itself is now 700 years old.
Yeah.
The roguelike formula has gone from novel to overused, but it is still a setup that can be very, very effective. And there's also a sort of like arena action sense to things that's reminiscent of like the Survivor style setup as well. So the way CatchaDiablos works is you are spawned into an arena space and there are several monsters scuttling about for you to catch. Your movement is done entirely through the crank, as is the actual catching mechanics. And it's a little tricky to explain, but I'll do my best. Turning the crank rotates a circle around your little chap. If you hold a button down, then you switch and start to orbit that circle. If you let go of the button, you stop wherever you are on that orbit, and then you can move the circle or move on the circle again. And that's sort of how you move around. In order to catch monsters, you need to successfully orbit a monster on the playing field, and you need to avoid colliding with them, and also avoid any of the projectiles and obstacles that will also spawn with certain monsters. Then there are things to collect, like items and bonuses like that, to augment your abilities. But the core of the game is using the crank to get around the arena, cranking circles around the monsters to catch them. And then the longer a stage goes on, the harder monsters appear, and the more frantic the stage gets until bosses appear to fight and catch. You start with 3 pieces of health, and you can pick up items to increase this and recover lost health. But if you can survive to the end of a stage, then you get a bigger permanent upgrade to your build. You shoot on over to the next stage, and you need to get through 3 stages to win a run. It's the same core formula that works in so many games. It's Elden Ring Night Rain on Playdate.
Exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. Between playing that on PS5 and this on Playdate, I'm just having a very consistent time, at least, with my gaming at the moment.
Yeah.
The mechanics of the game feel quite fiddly. At first, there's some Gregory Kogos certified brain rewiring that needs to be done in terms of navigating your movement with the crank and making sure you're moving the right way round your various circles of articulation. My first thought was, why can't I just use the D-pad to move around and then use the crank when I want to fight or catch something? I still stand by that a bit, but I think the game would possibly then be too fast for the Playdate to handle. Like comparing it to a game like Core Fault, which was a similarly ambitious action game attempting to recreate the Vampire Survivors experience in 1 bit. You can see the foundation that Core Fault built in CatchaDiablos for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can see Core Fault desperately navigating that fine line between pushing the Playdate to its limit without it falling over and still trying to give the player that sense of overpowered synergistic building that makes roguelikes and survivor-likes, so fun. And CatchaDiablos does a similar sort of thing to what Core Fault, which is to start you with, not just starting you with nothing, but starting you with slightly less than nothing. So you move far too slowly for it to be fun. So that you start your build at, -1 or -2, rather than starting at 0, like you would in, say, Binding of Isaac. So when you get your first movement upgrade and you start to move at a normal pace, you're like, well, hey, here I go. So once you do get those first few power-ups, then you start to feel like you've started playing the game. But it works successfully, because as soon as you can move a bit faster, your circle becomes a bit bigger, or monsters become that much easier to catch. You get those little rushes of dopamine and adrenaline that spurs you on to work a bit harder, push yourself a bit further. Something that like Core Fault does, which I do sort of miss a bit here, is having a sense of overall progression where you're upgrading your core character in between runs.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that sense of overall progression in my roguelikes, which is what differentiates the roguelike from the roguelite. Even in games that initially don't maybe appear to have that sort of overall progression, looking at something like Binding of Isaac, you will still unlock more items that you can then find on future runs that will be more powerful, and you could encounter those in future runs. And with Binding of Isaac in particular, there's always the chance of getting like a super overpowered item in the first room of a run, even like Elden Ring Night Rain has like a low-powered upgrade system that means you can power up and customize your characters between runs to make starting a new run just a bit more enticing. Because at the moment, I don't sort of get that, just one more run type of thing with CatchaDiablos, because I know I have to go back to starting from scratch again, which is going to feel like starting from -1 again,
Yeah.
Like, I really want to complete my Monsterpedia, which there's 60 monsters in it to catch. And I'm only at I think I'm maybe at about 25%. I haven't done a full successful run yet. I haven't managed to beat the 3 stages.
Hard game.
It is a hard game. It's possible I'll unlock more stuff when I'm done with that, and that will sort of actually, correct some of the sort of little quibbles I've got. And I think it's worth saying that, whilst this game is technically superb, it looks great. It's got great clear designs for the monsters and the different elements in play. It runs brilliantly. Like, once you have rewired your brain, it controls, beautifully, seamlessly, smoothly. The core gameplay is fun and addictive. Despite all of those positives, I think this is a game that is also, like you said, quite inaccessible, because it doesn't give you anything to go on. There's no help. There's no tutorial. It's, each run starts with essentially a tutorial, so that you have to basically move your character to a wormhole to start the game. And that is basically going, okay, you need to now know, you just need to make sure that you can move You can do that mechanic.
And make a circle.
You know, so make sure you can do those two things. But then I don't know what conditions I need to have to spawn certain monsters. There's a bar that goes up and down on that. I don't know what that does. There's some icons that are somewhere else. Don't know what that does. And I think that's fine because, you know, that's like, I like having that sort of thing to sort of discover. But I don't know. It doesn't feel right here. It feels like I need a bit more to go on, you know, to sort of find my way. And because, like I said, like it feels. I was sort of like this with Night Rain for the first few runs, being like, I'm just fumbling in the dark, and I don't know if I'm pushing myself in the right direction to do better, or if I'm making things worse or harder for myself, you know. And that is a whole element to it, but also, yeah, I don't know. I feel it's unwelcoming. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, like you said, these two games, I think, have the biggest risk of people starting and never coming back to, if they don't click with it straight away or understand what the game is doing. In the case of like Shadowgate.
Yes. Yeah.
I understand the sort of language of roguelikes because I've played a lot of them and I spent a lot of time enjoying them and thinking about them and getting like really deep in the mechanics of them. So like I recognise a lot of things, and that's sort of how I'm sort of enjoying myself and finding my way with it. But yeah, it is punishing. It is hard, and like as a little gameplay quibble, I find it very difficult to know if I'm gonna bump into a monster or not when I'm orbiting it.
Yes,
that's not very clear to me. Yeah, and it's like there's sometimes when I'm sure I'm going to catch it and I hit into it, and you know your health is very, very precious and it's not easy to get back, and and I've misjudged it, and I'm not convinced that I did, you know. So like, but then you know I understand that like having some control options or some difficulty concessions, like. In a way, that would make sense for this type of game, especially sort of given like the accessibility that has been, you know, kind of really at the forefront of a lot of the games of this season so far. But I also suspect that this game is pushing like the Playdate to its maximum capability with the amount of stuff that's happening on screen, the amount of stuff it's keeping track of, everything's happening, like as quick and as sharp as it can do without it starting to get laggy and clunky. So any option that you could toggle on that would make things go faster or easier, I think that would compromise the performance of the game.
It could do, yeah. It might be a real kind of knife edge balance. And
I'm a big believer of you know, not every game being for every gamer. As we've said before, and it's fine for people to play this and find it too hard or too fiddly or too unforgiving, because there are, you know, other casual experiences out there to enjoy. There are similar games that are more forgiving, but you know, for someone like me, I like a challenging roguelike. I enjoy the task of getting better at finely tuned controls, getting your head around the logistics of navigating successful roguelike runs. CatchaDiablos is definitely the best of its kind on the Playdate, but I'd like to be better at it. I'd like to be better at it, or you know, yeah.
Try as I might, I cannot get my brain to allow me to play this game with any efficiency whatsoever. And most frustrating for my own neurology as I play this is when I place my loop over an enemy perfectly, I've got it lined up and it's like they bang in the middle, I'm not going to crash into it. I hold down the button to start my capture, and sometimes mid-rotation, my brain starts making me backpedal on the crank. It's like I'm turning in one way, and instead of just saying like, just ride it out, just carry on, I start kind of umming and ahhing and like getting stuck on the corners, like it won't let me go round all the way. And I've got a bit better as I played, but the amount of times I've taken damage through pure user error has been really frustrating because I don't know how to make my brain work with my eyes more logically. You know, it's the rewiring thing we spoke to Gregory about. I get it. I've played more Amaze this last week as well since we spoke to him, and it's starting to make more sense. Yeah. But there's something about the way it does in this game, and because you're working at a slightly higher speed as well, there's less room for error. it's really tough. Like the frustration also extends to some of the enemies for me as well, and some of the bosses that fire in projectiles.
Yeah.
Because when you are moving at speed across the stage to give yourself a capture opening, you then sometimes are put in a position where you need to make, for instance, like a complete loop in one direction to capture them, and then a sort of immediately arc off in the opposite direction to avoid taking damage.
Yeah.
Because that's the quickest way out of, danger's path. And I just can't do it. Can't do it. Like,
yeah.
I want to keep practicing. I want to get better. Like you've just said, I want to get to a point where it's like, I might not finish the game, but I can at least say I've given it a fair shake and I've tried my best. And, a maze is starting to make more sense. But I think it's having the enemies here, like the kind of like semi-randomized sort of AI movement is what makes this additionally difficult.
Yeah.
Because even in Amaze's toughest sequences, you can sort of look at each circle and plot out what you're going to do. So you can say, right, I need to go clockwise, I need to zip across, I need to go anti-clockwise, half the circle, zip across, and you sort of like shadow box the whole thing before you commit to moving. And when you do fuck up, it's straight back to the beginning of that sequence. So it doesn't feel as big a loss as taking a hit in CatchaDiablos and being like, well, this is basically impossible now because I've got 1 health to try and finish the stage. Yeah. Because it's, it's a reactive, action-heavy roguelike. It's that's what it needs. There's just not the breathing room for you to really get your bearings outside of that very first intro walk that sets up the run. Beyond that first screen, it's all go all of the time as soon as it spawns in 2-3 enemies. I don't dislike the game at all. Like, I don't want it to seem like it's being negative, but I've found that I've had to really push myself to go back after a few failed runs because I haven't yet hit that magic point where progress feels possible.
Yeah.
I'm not averse to that because I've mentioned a few times in the past, like when I first played Lumines, nothing made any sense. I had to really bash my head against it for tens of hours until I started to actually see the patterns and see the cascades and get into what the game was doing. But this game feels different enough in terms of input that it almost needs, I don't know, hours and hours of willful self-flagellation for me to start moving forwards. So I guess I'll reflect again at the season's end in a few weeks' time to see if I gave it enough sort of free time and free play to get the hang of it. Outside of maybe this week feeling more pressured to just quickly try and get better because I'm trying to get my thoughts together for the show. So, not having that sort of schedule to work to, maybe in a few weeks I'll say, oh, it just clicked and I've started getting better and I've filled 50% of the CatchaPedia, whatever it's called. Yeah. But also, maybe not. Maybe I'll just go back and finish Shadowgate instead.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
No. God, no. It'd be interesting to see if, like, the developer does do any sort of like patches for it. Even if it's just given the options to be like, oh, you start with 1 more health, or or you recover all your health when you finish a stage, which you don't do, which I was really hoping you would, because I was like, so every time I pick up the collectible of like, I get 1 extra heart, I was like, no point, never going to get back to filling them up.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get back to that point.
I think the answer is to do what Isaac does and say there are different characters.
Yeah.
You'll have a character that's like, okay, they're the neutral one, decent speed, 3 health, there you go.
Yeah.
Here's the tanky character, 5 health, but a bit slower. Just giving you a few options and then almost having them in tiers to say, this is the one you're going to have the most success with. This is the real tough one for experts, and let people find their way. But that's a reasonably easy fix outside of obviously having to design some new sprite art and things like that.
Yeah,
but
and making sure the game doesn't fall over.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of just like changing those variables at the start of a run,
that'd be nice.
I don't think that's impossible in terms of like a reasonably easy tweak as it could be. It's not redesigning things outside of saying, make the character a little bit quicker, make that happen a little bit less, or whatever it might be, or start them with one of the power-ups. Like I got one earlier that gave me 2 circles, and suddenly I was just like blasting through things much easier because it spawns 1 in front and behind you, so you have kind of like double the area. The one in front of you, but then the one behind you can still be used to capture.
Nice.
So
fun.
There's lots of stuff, but there's all sorts of ways that it could be softened a little bit. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. But
there we go. That was week 4 of Playdate Season 2. Divisive. I think that's a very good word to throw into the mix for these 2 games. If you've got thoughts on these games, let us know. Jump in the Discord, chat to us on The join link is on our website, o3c.games. Chat to us on social media at O3C Games on pretty much everything. Find us on Blue Sky. Would love to hear how people are getting on with CatchaDiablos and Shadowgate PD and the other games and any other Playdate games and any other games. Fuck it.